Welcome, Anita Jacobson, to Artist Spotlight 2020 with the Millstream Arts Festival in collaboration with the Art Crawl for downtown St. Cloud. I am very happy to be visiting with you today and sharing your work with the rest of our viewers today. I know I see your work a lot at the Minnesota Street Market when I go and visit
Yes,
there, and I love the new work and get excited to see what you're working on. So
well,
could you
thank
share
you.
with the rest of us who haven't seen your work what you do and your background with your work?
Well, I'm Anita of Nita's Knots. I am a fiber artist, otherwise known as a fiber enablist, because what one of the things that really jazzes me is being able to share what I do. Because especially when you get to the spinning and the felting, people aren't quite sure what that is and what that's all about. Um, my background is I am largely self-taught. I learned to crochet from my grandmother when I was about 8. And my mom was a seamstress and she taught me to sew. Those things stayed with me. And then when I turned 50, um, my sister said, let's have a girls' weekend. I said, great, plan a project for us. And she planned a crochet project that turned into a felted purse. And so, being 50, nearing empty nest stage, it reignited my uh, desire to do something with my hands, do something to keep me busy. So I started by crocheting. At that point, I was working at a daycare, so there was a lot of baby hats. I did boot cuffs, and this was when the crochet craze was super popular. So all the boot cuffs and cowls and that kind of stuff. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. My hairdresser at the time worked at Bloom Salon that hosted art crawls. She encouraged me to get involved in that. And I met Lou of Lulur. And so it was at that point, I think, one of the art crawls where Millstream came through. And was that you? And said, "Hey, would you like to be in Millstream?" And I'm like, "What?" Panic, because it was way outside of my comfort zone. I had moved beyond just the boot cuffs and stuff, and I was crocheting things that I would see in perhaps ceramics. I'm like, I bet I could create that by crocheting and felting it down. And so that's where my felting really started, was crocheting and then felting it down. Lou said, hey, do you ever do a barter? Because I'd really love a cat cave. So I said, oh, sure. Well, Lou wanted a big cat cave. So crocheting, you take something and it shrinks by about a third. So if you want a cat cave that's about yay big, you got to start with something that's yay big. Now, when you crochet, I'm not good at math, but you start with a small circle and that doesn't take very long. You go around the next circle and that doesn't take very long, but it just exponentially takes longer and longer and longer. So I said, hey, I can't crochet this. Maybe it's time to start a wet felting project. I had fiber on hand. I guess that's the other part of it. I started spinning. So I had the wool on hand. And I'd been interested in what this wet felting was. So I decided for my first wet felting project to make a cat cave. Now, that's not the way to start, but I did. And so the original pattern was probably a good 4 feet across. So I needed a whole lot of wool for that. And I didn't know what I was doing. And I purchased wool that was not processed. So I had to card it all myself, which, again, this was a huge process. At one point, I had it all laid out and it wasn't felting up. So I was stomping on it in a bathtub. And long story short, too late. I got it completed, nice hard cat cave, and I met Lou to exchange her cat cave for my jewelry. She said, "Oh, this is wonderful. I love it. Will you do it again?" I said, "Not on your life." Um, it was one of those go big or go home projects, and it was crazy. So it took me a while, but then I went back to building smaller vessels. Um, so largely self-taught, YouTube videos, tutorials, and just experimenting with the wool. And there were a lot of lessons to be learned. Um, I moved on into hats. I took a hat making class. Took a year before I was able to follow through with that. And hats are kind of my passion. I miss making the vessels, but hats are my passion. I've loved hats since I was in high school. I wore hats all the time. I have a small pea head, so I couldn't wear hats as an adult because I need a child size hat. So making hats was one way that I could wear hats. So yeah, is that kind of
Yes,
you
that's
know,
wonderful.
I get started and I go.
Yep, no,
Um,
that's wonderful.
yeah.
I remember that time when Lou pointed to you out. She said, "You have to go talk to Nita about her work. She
Yeah.
needs to be in Millstream." And
Yeah.
it was really nice to go over and visit with you and see that, and one thing that you speak to in your story is, art really being lifelong and
Yeah.
art being something that can really enrich our lives and not only the maker but the people receiving the pieces
Right.
too and knowing your
Right.
story, it's a really cool part of having one of your
That.
pieces too.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. It's and the fiber arts to me, they're tactile. First of all, here's my wool. I touch it, and it's different wools feel different. Um, and then the other part is that it just connects you to such a long tradition. Felting is actually is the first way to make fabric. They think it was discovered by somebody stuffing sheep's wool into their sandals, and while they walked on it with the sweat and the wet, it caused a fabric. It caused it to mat down. So they think that that's where that started. Although there's nothing specific, it goes back that far. It predates spinning, predates anything else. So I
Wow.
love that part of it. I love the connectedness I love the fact that my grandma taught me to crochet, and I'm using these things that go back and connect me to my history. So
Mhm.
that's part of where my heart is too. Is not just uh, what I do; it's what it connects me to.
It's generational. I love that.
Yes.
Also,
Yeah.
so let's start looking at some of your pieces here. And you said there's a story behind this, so I'd love to hear
There
it.
is. Um, there's a local yarn store called Rocking Horse Farm. It's kind of out by the new Tech High School. My favorite yarn store. I took a sock dyeing class there. It was there that I learned to spin. And Vogue Knitting was in Minneapolis 4 or 5 years ago. And they asked if I would demo spinning, and man their booth for a little bit while they took a break or lunch break or whatever. Absolutely. Again, I love to share. I love to um, enable people, shall we say, get them fascinated by something they might not have seen before. So here I am at Vogue Knitting, this huge knitting conference down in Minneapolis, spinning, wearing a vest that I crocheted. So here comes a photographer and takes a picture of me, and I actually wound up in Vogue Knitting magazine, being a crocheter and a spinner in a knitting magazine. So that
Oh,
so just kind of incorporates it all. My girlfriend said, "Hey, you've got to check out Vogue Knitting. I saw somebody I know in it." And wow, that was pretty crazy.
that
Um,
is neat. That is neat.
yeah.
Let's see one of your pieces now. I think the first one we have is a coiled pot, and it's
Yes, and again, this is
process.
what I was talking about. I was thinking of a clay coiled pot. What could I do to make a clay coiled pot? So if you see in the lower, would I say the lower left-hand corner, the big piece where it's got it's just big. I started by crocheting a circle, and then I just continued by crocheting a long, 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 long strand. And then I felted it in the washing machine. Now, what happens when you felt is wool is not smooth, it has scales. And so as you agitate wool with warm soapy water, those scales grab onto each other and they start compacting. The same holds true for yarns because yarn is made of wool. So the process is uh, produces a slightly different result because you're starting with a yarn versus a fiber, but the idea is the same. The fibers, the scales grab onto each other and shrink it. So the one picture is what it looked like before I shrunk it in the washing machine. And the other picture is what it looked like after I shrunk up the fiber. And then I just wound it round and round and round like a pot, and I stitched it together. I finished it. That's a lilac wood button that my husband made for me. The lilac wood is our tree that's from outside. Again, that's part of connecting me with who I am, with what I have, with my husband who made the button for me, and it just all goes together.
Yes, let's look at another piece here.
Again, this was an example of I saw this gnome in clay. So this was just a clay piece, and it had, the beard was clay and the whole thing was clay. And I thought, oh, I could crochet that. And then the beard was the hand spun. So combining the crochet with the felting, with the spinning, and just kind of a progression into the next. This is the cat cave I was talking about. This is Lou's kitty. She sent me a picture of her kitty using the cave. It'd be great if I could had a size reference, but that was a pretty big cat cave and I have only made one thing that big since, and wow, yep, that was interesting. But after that, like I said, I did go back to the felting, and this is one of my first felted vessels, just simple black and white wool. It starts by, this kind of felting is different than the crocheting and felting. I start with the wool. I lay it out on a piece of plastic resist and wrap this resist in 3 layers. And so most of the layers here were white, but on part of it I had black. And as you felt it, those fibers melt into each other. It softens the colors. It just really changes character as it felts and shrinks. The button you see here is a stone button that my daughter made. The rock is from Lake Superior. She lives up in Duluth, and she goes rock hunting on Lake Superior, and then she will make buttons out of it. So again, connecting all of these things together. This was one of my first hats. I think this was before actually a hat class, and it was just kind of experimenting on my own. And the button was, again, a stone button made by my daughter with rock from Lake Superior. The colors, just blending the gray and the turquoise, and it just really, again, softens and just makes a different fabric. This here is just another one of my vessels, a little bit larger piece, and I often get the question, and I try not to get frustrated. Part of it's a little frustrating. What do you do with it? Well, what do you do with a piece of art? You put it somewhere where you look and you admire its beauty and it makes you feel good. I also say that, because it's wool, fiber art, you want to touch it. I said, and it makes you smile. But I was at up in Little Falls for one of their markets, and somebody was selling dried flowers. So I thought, what a beautiful accent. Somebody else's beautiful dried flowers in my vessel. And hopefully, just to give people an idea, this is what you can do with a wool vessel, just like you could do it with a ceramic vessel. This is probably my favorite piece. One of the questions was Cher's favorite piece. Again, I've moved away from the hats, or I'm away from the vessels, but this is one of my last vessels, and I like combining different textures. In this there's going to be some different wools. Each wool felts differently. It produces a different texture. So I think I have merino on the inside, and this is a blue-faced Leicester, I believe, on the outside with various colors. And then if you look at the brown, it's a different texture altogether. And this is a corn fiber that I've actually needle felted on. It gives it additional texture and just a different depth. I like on the vessel you saw previously, I combined a lot of silk as well. Silk will not shrink the same way wool does, and so it gives this wonderfully crinkly texture as it shrinks up. And so that's kind of what I'm not 100% certain there's silk in this one, but maybe, but on top, this is a corn fiber that I purchased and needle felted on top to give it more texture. One of my favorite hats, pumpkin colored. My hats are often inspired by ties. I like to comb the thrift stores for ties. I specialize in Jerry Garcia ties. Love Jerry Garcia ties, and then old pins. Old jewelry, old belts. So this is one where it just all came together with a big sun pin, as well as the beautiful colors in the silk tie and the pumpkin color of the hat. One of my favorite hats. And this is chosen because one of the questions that you asked had is how has COVID affected you and your practice? I am a substitute teacher by day. So when they went to distance learning, I was suddenly unemployed. Thinking that this is going to just be a great time to delve into belting more and getting stuff done. I don't think I was alone in just feeling a little lost. One by one, the places where we display our art, the shows were taken away. And without that without that goal, I started to lose some of my motivation. And what it did was it brought me back full circle to a time where I needed something to do. When I turned 50, I needed something to do. So here I am in COVID. I can't wrap my head around making hats, but I've got to do something. I've got to touch fiber. I've got to touch wool. So I went back to the crocheting and crocheting critters. So I make little crocheted black cats that I felt up. I started making different colors of cats. And then I also created a llama. This llama's name is Tommy the llama, who travels around with my daughter in her Tommy Bahama Airstream. And so I said that you need to just take this llama with you and take pictures. It's kind of like that gnome that you see. I said, I'm going to live vicariously through you on your COVID adventures with my little COVID creature. So that is the story of Tommy the llama. His little scarf is woven and wool and woven out of my hand spun. So again, there's incorporating all sorts of my passions into one. But I went back to how COVID affected me. As I went back to crocheting. I crocheted my top. it's something I can do. I can follow a pattern. I can still touch the yarn. I can still have the tactile. Crocheting and knitting is a repetitive practice that's been proven to really work well on your brain. Knitting more is a little bit more left to right, but crocheting too. Whenever you do something that's going left to right, left to right, left to right, it helps calm your brain and recenter you. So that's how COVID has affected me. It's kind of brought me back full circle. Not doing as much felting, but I did go back to the crochet and different aspects of that, which is fun. It's not that it's not an amazing thing to do. It's just different.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, thank you for letting me
So,
share.
oh, absolutely. And I see that you have some pieces behind you also on
Yes.
your shelf
You want me to
there.
show you some of my hats?
Would you like to share some hats?
I love my hats.
Oh,
So, well,
great.
first of all, here's my hat that I'm wearing. Again, the band is an old belt. Um, and this piece right here, which you can kind of see, it's a little bit glary, but that's an earring, which I thought just made an amazing addition to the hat. Um, this hat right here is, again, it's a Jerry Garcia tie and definitely one of the wilder ties I have purchased. But I love the colors. They're vibrant, they're watercolor. And then this piece right here, again, is purchased at, there we go, purchased at Savers. And it's a homemade piece. You can tell that it's been homemade. So I've taken something somebody else has made, the art of Jerry Garcia, and incorporated it into my hats. This is definitely an eye catcher. Somebody someday will buy this hat, but it is going to take somebody with a lot of character to want to wear that bright hat. The new style right now is kind of a boho chic hat, nice big floppy hat. This is a button and the silk tie, one of my favorites. This is a unisex hat. It can be either a man's hat or a woman's hat. Where can we go with that? Backwards. Okay. The button, I love, love, love the button. I don't know if I can get that. You can kind of see it's like a horse. Let's see. There we go. A horse. And then just the beautiful silk tie. Let's see, anything else particular? This one right here, this tie was one of my favorites, the peacock feathers. I blended the fiber on this hat to kind of bring out the grays and greens of the tie. And then just a little bit of bling right there to finish it off. I've got something simple, beanies. This is a Vikings beanie. This is a really good example of the silk I was talking about. I don't know if I can get the texture. Okay, so let's see if I can get it up there. A little bit delay. Okay, so you can see that gold is all squiggly. That gold is the silk. So it starts out laid flat on the fiber, and as the wool shrinks up, it makes the silk all squiggly. Yeah, that's about it, I guess. I do have my work at Minnesota Street Market with some more vessels and stuff, and yeah.
Yeah, I've seen hats there also.
Yes, I take them out during the summer because it's not. Some people buy them during the summer, but I don't want them to see them and then come fall and they've just seen them before. So I remove them during the summer, create a little bit more excitement when they come back in the fall. My goal someday is to have several venues for hats and then rotate them, a nice large inventory and big dreams.
Well,
But that
that's a
would be
dream project, maybe.
that is a dream project right there.
I love that. Thank you so much, Anita, for
Yeah,
sharing your
yeah,
fiber art with us today, your hats, your critters, and I've seen those at the co-op also,
yeah,
the
yeah.
cats
I've got
and
the Santas at Christmas time. Yep,
yes.
those are fun. Those are fun.
Yes, yes, I'm so glad that people can go there and purchase your work, and like you talk about the touch and picking it up and feeling it and how
Yeah,
important that experience is.
it
They
is.
can see your work and on Nita's Knots on Facebook also, and stay up to date with the new pieces you're making and the different things you're trying out, and on Facebook, but then they can go to the market and pick something up and
Yep.
engage with it.
Yes, yes. That my art's all about engaging with the tactileness of it. So
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Is there anything else you would like to share before we close our time together?
I just came across this comment or a quote. I have connected with someone. She is another fiber artist and vendor that I have come in contact with. And on her Facebook page, this was a quote that to me, sums up why I do what I do and what not all artists, um, we don't all create for the same reason, but this is, quote, sums up really well why I do what I do. It says, there is a reason we do what we do. It's not just play, although play is good for us. It is not just business. We were given our talents by a loving God who is the originator of beauty in the world. We transmit his beauty from our hands and our hearts. And I love the hands part of that because it is so tactile. And I'm a fiber nerd, and it is very emotional too. I've got another quote that when I teach classes, I read that and I start crying every single time. And they're all looking at me going, "Wow, you really are a fiber nerd, aren't you?" I am. I am. So
Well,
that is.
your passion comes through in your work. It comes through in
Thank
your
you.
work, and the love of your medium comes through in your work too. So
Yes.
thank you
Thank you.
so much, Anita, for sharing with
Yes.
us today and visiting with us, and thank you again. And we'll
Yeah.
watch for your work on Facebook and go to the market to pick it up.
So, sounds great. Thanks so
All right.
much.
Thank you. Bye, Anita.
Have a great day. Bye.